Excellent guys, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to review another set of two-way radios from the company Retevis. Those are some mid-sized ones, and to be particular it's the RT617, the European edition, the PMR446. So with 0.5 watts output power, that's something you might want to consider depending on which country you're located in. There usually are in fact different rules and regulations in place. In Europe we have the PMR446, I can show this to you here. And for you, an important part is if, for example, you're located in North America in the United States, then the FRS would be better for you. I'm also going to link this in the video description because the FRS, it is my understanding, some channels they have a higher output power, and especially in the US, I think that's something you can benefit from. Otherwise, the radios usually are pretty much the same, other than the frequencies and the output power. And guys, I also invite you to head over to my channel page. Let me show this quickly to you here. There you can compare different Retevis radios or also radios from other manufacturers and get a little bit of a better understanding what to consider when you purchase a radio. Some radios are waterproof, others are not waterproof. You have bigger ones, you have very tiny and compact ones. Some have a lot of accessories, some have less accessories. And that's why people like to compare before they make a purchase. What we're gonna do next is quickly unbox these mid-sized Retevis. Personally, I like mid-sized ones because they fit well into my hand. Obviously, if you have children, then it can make sense to give them something that's a little bit smaller. And I think what we're gonna do right now, you're watching the introductory part, and in the unboxing part, I'm gonna show you a few close-up shots, and then I can maybe hold this one and then maybe a little bit smaller one, or maybe even a big one, maybe three next to each other, so you can see a little bit of the size comparison, because that's simply a convenience thing for when you're using these radios, that they fit into your hand. That way you have like a better grip on it. Otherwise, then part 3, I'm always going to do the range test. Obviously, if you have the US model, it will have a higher output power. So if you're watching the range test in part 3, you can expect that if you have the US model, you're going to get a bigger range, simply because the output power can be, I think, 4 times as high, if I'm not mistaken. But other than that, keep in mind that when you watch the range test, take with a little bit of a grain of salt. It's even tough for the manufacturers to state an exact range, because the range always varies based on your terrain and environmental conditions. Open pastures, you have more range, versus if you're somewhere in an urban area, lots of concrete buildings, that will reduce your range. So, but that's something you're going to figure out over time by using these radios. You play around with it a little, and you're going to get a good sense of what ranges you can expect. So without further ado, I'm excited you're here. I've told you everything that you need to know in the introductory part, what we're going to do right now. So let's get rolling with the unboxing, guys. Let's get started. Now guys, let's have a closer look at the Retevis RT617. And guys, I'm really thinking next time I'm in the US, next time I'm in Florida, maybe I should just order 10 FRS radios from Retevis and test them out as well at the beach house, driving around with the golf cart, doing the range test. I think that's probably going to look a little bit funny, a German dude driving around with the golf cart and doing FRS radio tests. Like I told you, that's the PMR version, the European version. The European radios, they always have a little bit of a lower power. So if you are in Spain, if you're in the UK and so on, then I think we people in Europe, we would enjoy having a little bit higher output power. Maybe 1 watt would be a good compromise. Maybe one day the European bureaucrats get around to that. But for now, what I think is particularly nice about this set of radios from Retevis is they come with a docking station. Although it is only a USB docking station, and that means you need some USB power supply of some sorts. For example, I have here one for my iPad, but because I have collected so many different Retevis radios over time, I finally decided to get the 5-port charger. Guys, I always put off getting the 5-port charger. I was a little bit skimping on that, but right now I got the 5-port charger, so let's quickly show you that as well. That might be useful. I mean, it's an extra item, you have to buy that separately, the RTC501. I can link this below as well. Maybe if you're using this commercially in your business, or maybe you're on a campsite or something like this, or at a trailer park, or Guys, I don't really know. There's so many different people who might use those radios. 5-port charger, definitely useful. You can charge multiple radios at once. One guy even contacted me on my channel and said, oh, he has a movie production company. He produces videos, and obviously if you produce videos somewhere outside, then you always have to have a few guys closing off the set. And so I think that would be also something useful for him, because charging every radio individually, that might be a little bit cumbersome, and the 5-port charger should streamline the process a little bit more. So that's just as a small side note. Let's quickly get back to the radios themselves. This is a 1200 milliamp hour battery, if I'm reading this correctly. So that should do pretty well if you're not using it too heavily. And it just slides in place, and it seems to be rock solid. Obviously you can release it here as well. Then you also have the ability to connect the headset, which from my testing, usually the internal speakers are pretty good. I'm not using these headsets very much, but some other people might need that. And here, push to talk, and then the function button that you can program. So let's quickly turn this on.
Turn on the radio. 1.
So, and yeah, that's also something I really like about this style of radios. You just still have these typical dials. You just turn the dial.
2.
Channel 1, channel 2,
3.
channel 3, and so on. And some other radios, you have like this display here, and then you have to push some button, go into some menu, and switch around. These are pretty straightforward to use.
1.
And sometimes I also get questions about interoperability. Can I use this radio with that radio, or that radio with that radio? Guys, the basic answer is, if it's a PMR radio, you can use it with another PMR radio. If it's a FRS radio, you can use it with another FRS radio. The only thing you want to make sure is that not in radio A and in radio B, there are, for example, these digital coded squelch. For example, if I configure a digital coded squelch here, and I pick one setting, and then I pick the other radio with the other setting, sometimes it's also called privacy code. But basically it means if I transmit here and I send a squelch code ABC, and the second radio is not also set on the squelch code ABC, the radio won't open up. So the easiest solution is get the USB programming cable, connect it here, download the software. I'm going to make another video about this, and double check to turn off the digital coded squelch on all your radios. Even if you have a radio that doesn't have the USB programming cable connector, you still can usually go into the menu and turn off the digital coded squelch. So that answers the question that people sometimes ask. And without further ado, let's quickly look at the belt clip, because for some people the belt clip is important, and then they're, oh, how long does the belt clip hold? Guys, I'm testing the radio, I'm not testing the belt clip, but it varies. I mean, what I noticed with this particular model, the belt clip is very easy to attach. It just slides into place, it sits firmly, but you can also remove it real quick. So that's how quick you can literally remove it. And some other models, you have to, I think you call it a Torx screwdriver, you have to attach it with some screws. So this is really quick snap on, snap off. Maybe because of that, it's not as durable, but I'm pretty sure even if you use that heavily in a business or something environment, why not should Retevis sell these separate if it breaks? So I think that should be a non-issue. Let's see how this works. Let's charge them up and then jump to the range test, guys. And guys, if you watched a few videos on my channel, you know this is the usual charging setup, except the difference is that right now I have this additional 5-port USB charger that I was delaying the purchase on. So let's quickly put that into the docking station and then switch on the power, which obviously is always a little bit tricky to do with one hand. And as you can see, the moment you switch on the power, the LEDs turn green for standby. I'm losing focus here a little bit. And then red if it's charging. So make sure if you get a new set of radios that you charge up the batteries first. And again, I think these Retevis radios, they look really good, and they always are, most of the, I mean, almost 99% of the time. I only had one radio that I didn't like, where the range was a little bit short, but for the most part, they perform quite well. Obviously, if you're in the US, make sure to get the version with the higher output power, the family radio service. That's what it's called in the US, I believe. And if you're in Europe, definitely stay with the PMR446. Except you're a ham radio operator, but then you already know what this is all about. because you have taken the ham radio exam. So guys, I let this charge for a couple hours so that the batteries are ready for the range test, and then let's just quickly jump to part 3 and check what sound quality we're going to get the further I go away. Let's jump to the next part, the range test. Range test guys, of the Retevis RT617 if I'm not mistaken, and really nice day, sunshine day, summer day outside. Test point number 1 with about 420 feet. 420 feet is pretty close. Let's see how far we can get. Test point number 1. Range test of the Retevis, black Retevis radios. Test point number 2 with about 790 feet. And guys, usually excellent sound quality here. The Retevis radios usually perform pretty nicely. So let's go a little bit further. Test point number 2, 790 feet. So guys, range test again, and I can't really stress this enough. Amazing summer day, super nice to do these range tests if we have such a nice weather outside. Test point number 3 with 1,250 feet. And guys, keep in mind, if you're in the States, the FRS version does have a higher output power, so we're testing the PMR right now. So 1,250 feet, test point number 3. Let's see how these radios perform, the RT617. And again guys, range test of the Retevis radios at test point number 4 with 1,540 feet approximately. And let's see how these perform. Maybe the range will be at the end a little bit shorter because we have summertime, nice breeze, also a little bit of wind. So let's check this out. Again, the FRS will have a higher range, I suppose. Test point number 4, 1,540 feet. And again, range test guys, this time at test point number 5 with 2,000 feet, approximately 2,000 feet. And always, for me, also interesting to see how these radios perform. Test point number 5, 2,000 feet. Let's go a little bit further. So guys, again, range test, and we are right now at test point number 6 with approximately 2,300 feet. And for the European low-power PMR radios with 0.5 watts, some of the radios, sometimes the quality starts to deteriorate a little bit, and always take the range test with a grain of salt. Like I told you a couple of times, the FRS will get a higher range, I'm pretty sure of it. And we are at 2,300 feet, and let's go a little bit further, see how these perform. And range test guys, at test point number 7 with approximately half a mile or 2,600 feet. And guys, you can always see the metric system in case you're using the metric system in the side card. It's 800 meters approximately. So yeah, I'm kind of curious how these radios sound. The black Retevis RT617, test point number 7. And again guys, I reached the next range test point. And if you can still hear that, we have reached 3,200 feet, or approximately 0.6 miles. And yeah, I'm still curious whether I can still hear this clearly. Sometimes all the green trees, the lush green, can interfere with the signal a little bit because the radios only have 0.5 watts output power. Test point number 8 with 3,200 feet, or 1 kilometer. And again, range test of the black Retevis radios. Test point number 9. And guys, it's really enjoyable to do these range tests when we have such a nice weather, really amazing. Test point number 9 with about 3/4 of a mile, or approximately 3,900 feet. Should work pretty well. I'm kind of curious how the radios perform, given that we have like all these green trees in between. Test point number 9, about 3/4 of a mile. Range test guys, so this time at test point number 10. That's the last test point for these European low power 0.5 watts PMR radios. If you still hear me, that's pretty good for European radio. If you're in the US, you can be happy because American radios, they can have, I think, like 4 times the output power, so they should give you a considerably larger range. But yeah, test point number 10,
0.5 kilometers or almost a mile or 4,900 feet, as you can see in the flight chart. This concludes the range test of the Retevis RT617.
Yeah, awesome guys. This concludes the range test of the Retevis RT617, and as you have seen, for a European PMR radio, they work quite well. Let me quickly take my notes card right here. So the audio quality was very good. I liked it a lot. And even the range was pretty good, considering that many of my other videos I shot during winter time or spring, so there weren't a lot of leaves on the trees. Right now everything is lush and green, so these radios don't only look very nice, are easy to use, but they perform very nice. And guys, I mean, I'm not 100% sure, but most radios are available both in the low power European PMR446 as well as the FRS version. Let me show this to you here. The FRS version usually has a higher output power, so that actually means if you're located in the United States, you can get even a much higher range as well. And I just have to reiterate this once more, the range test, always take it with a grain of salt. I have still, despite the trees that are in my testing path, there are a few buildings and mostly trees. So, and it's not like a super dense forest. But nonetheless, if you're in a city center somewhere with lots of concrete buildings, the range will be shorter as opposed to you're in the countryside. So guys, it might be repetitive if you have watched my other videos, but I just don't want to make sure you don't get the wrong impression. But from testing it, I recently also had these smaller Retevis RT617, and you see they have a smaller antenna, so that's why they didn't perform as well. As opposed to those, they have like a long antenna. So obviously you're invited to check those out and compare that as well. Let me quickly show you my website, the playlist radios, I mean my YouTube channel page. There you can find a bunch of other reviews, such as the smaller Retevis radios that I showed you with the small antenna. But I think those are really good, and especially if you wanna use more than one, I would also recommend you to check out this RTC 501 5-port charger, which is quite handy simply because, yes, 2 radios I can handle because I have the iPad charger, the iPhone charger, and maybe even a third one from the car navigation system. But as soon as you have multiple radios, let's say 5 or even 10, then an additional charger such as this comes in quite handy. And other than that, I think I showed you everything. I showed you
13.
how to turn this on, how to change the channels. I showed you the belt clip, so maybe I can do additional video later on with the programming cable. That's kind of interesting, although technically, at least in Europe, you're not allowed to raise the output power, which sometimes is possible with the programming cable. But nonetheless, you have learned something new about the Retevis RT617, and I see you as a subscriber on my channel. And in the next video, make sure to check out these smaller radios as well, or whatever else I have on my playlist on the channel page. I am excited you're here. See you soon in the next video. All the best to you. Have fun with your new gear. Take care.
And like I just told you a second ago, if you head over to my channel page, you can compare different radios, not just from Retevis, that gives you good orientation. Maybe you want something that's smaller and more compact, or you want something with a lot of accessories or something that's waterproof. So a lot of people like to compare before they make a purchase, and you can compare right now as well. Have fun with your new gear. I see you as a subscriber and in the next video. All the best to you. Take care.